When Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook in 2004, his express mission was to create a more open and connected world. And it's obvious that for years he achieved that dream while becoming spectacularly wealthy. But now, as a result of the organization's many growing problems, including its failure to manage users' data and the growth of fake news, the question has become, is the social media giant doing more harm than good? A new Frontline special titled The Facebook Dilemma examines the rise of the company from a Harvard dorm project to a global empire, exploring the platform's impact on privacy and democracy here and around the world. Take a look.
We stand for connecting every person, for a global community.
Facebook systematically went from interconnecting people to essentially having a surveillance system of their whole lives.
Facebook has come under fire for its role during the election.
Everybody was pretty upset that we hadn't caught it during the election, and it was a very intense time.
Zuckerberg will testify.
I still have questions. If we're going to make sure that in 2018 and 2020 this doesn't happen again.
Watch online or on air beginning October 29th.
And joining us now is James Jacoby, the producer of The Facebook Dilemma. James, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
That's quite an epic documentary you made, really scary, really riveting. Did you get the sense from those who were there at the beginning or early on that they really knew what they were creating and that perhaps they weren't ready for it?
Absolutely. I think that from talking to all the former employees who were there at the early days, they really believed in Mark Zuckerberg's mission, that he was going to be the one to create this one place, essentially like this 21st century digital public space where billions of people would eventually gather to share and communicate. And they all believed that that was going to make the world, as Mark Zuckerberg put it, more open and connected. And they thought of it as a digital nation state. They saw it as had really highfalutin language about what they were actually creating, but they didn't necessarily know what that really meant in terms of the responsibilities that would come with that.
Wow. And the documentary really shows that, too. Now, the company developed its news feed in 2009 when the existing laws pretty much made it clear that Facebook would not be responsible for the content that its users put on the site. What was the philosophy of Facebook at the time surrounding free speech and censorship on its platform?
There's a character in the documentary named Tim Sparapani. He was one of the early employees who worked on these policies to figure out what would be the rules and regulations in Facebook world. And as he puts it in the show, he basically says they took a libertarian approach, meaning that they'd allow people to say and post pretty much anything except for a few things: nudity, incitements to violence, like hate speech. But they'd go really, as he puts it, it would be the greatest experiment in free speech in history. And I think that that was a very consequential decision to take that hands-off approach that we saw the consequences of actually early on Facebook.
So in 2011, during the Arab Spring, or the birth of the Arab Spring, I think Facebook, as your documentary shows, demonstrated that it wasn't just a technological giant, but a political giant, a real power player politically, yes, especially in Egypt. Talk a little bit about the importance of Facebook in the Arab Spring, particularly in Egypt.
Well, if you put yourself back in that time, we were all hearing about this almost miraculous social media revolution that was happening in countries that had very controlled media, or state-owned media in places like Egypt. And so Facebook comes along and everybody can publish, people can organize themselves, and we all saw it as a tool for liberation. The thing is that the aftermath of the Arab Spring, a lot of things became evident on the ground in the politics of Egypt and the other places where the Arab Spring took place, but also on Facebook, where incendiary comments and kind of tribalism online was really rearing its head at that point, and that the Facebook algorithms, which reward content that engages us, they were actually helping to enhance polarization. Yeah. And it's an early warning sign for the company about what their effect on public discourse would be.
All right, James, let's jump to Cambridge Analytica. Now, that's a company that harvested the personal data of millions of Facebook users without their consent. Once this was discovered, the Senate called Zuckerberg to testify. He did. He was very contrite, and he assumed all responsibility on himself. And he said that the problem was that they had no idea, they were too late in discovering what the problem was. Do you think he was sincere, or was that a part of a PR campaign to save the company's face and to save the company?
Well, I certainly think they came up with a very clever message for him to say, which is that we now recognize we have a broader responsibility for what we've created here. That's sort of the line that he used. Also, he introduced another line that's been used, which is that they were too slow. They were too slow to recognize. They weren't fast enough to recognize the degree of power they had and the degree of responsibility that comes with that. I think that the viewers of the documentary can judge for themselves whether they think that that was a genuine statement or not, but it does seem to me as though there's been a pattern of apologies over the years for precisely that, which is that how are they wielding the power that they're accumulating rapidly.
So do you think that Facebook is now doing the things that they must do to protect the users' privacy and to protect the users from fake news? And if not, what needs to be done and who needs to do it?
That's the ultimate question here about Facebook. And the thing is that we're all put in a position now of sort of having to take the company's word for it. There's been no additional regulation, at least here in the States, of Facebook. People are very kind of confused and divided about what the policy solutions would be. So in the meantime, with the midterms coming up, for instance, and they're saying that they're doing their best to take down foreign actors that may be trying to meddle with the midterms, we essentially have to take the company's word for it that they are amping up their safety and security and that their standards are high. But we really ultimately don't have a way to audit that, and we don't have a way to judge whether they're living up to a standard or not.
All right. Well, James, it's a fascinating documentary. Thank you so much for making it, and thank you so much for joining us today to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
The Frontline special, The Facebook Dilemma, premieres this week on PBS. Check your local listings for airtimes.